Hey, targeted individuals in particular, how's it going? I just cleaned off some files with a file editing program on a cell phone. I've got not turned on the Wi-Fi and even airplane mode on, and then I'm going to see while I have a clean upload if those who have virtual drive access and otherwise access to this cell phone can't get in programming to like modify the video upload so it can get endlessly altered like it has been probably happening since 2016 for me. I think that's what they do. They insert software where they can always modify like any part of the video they want. So I noticed maybe some of it, and then my Wi-Fi's hacked and shit, so I'm not really functional for a lot of combat communications. And I'm beat up pretty handily, routinely. A fucking popsicle stick spinal column for absolute unadulterated nonstop beast system Satanism. And it'll probably be that way to the day I die, because somebody put me in the program in 2004 in Oregon in a blue state, and I've never been taken off anybody's list. There may have been some speculation of another gang like stealing my R&M from another one in 2013, but that's kind of probably bullshit. I was told by perps because, as Kevin Christian describes, they only need to know my address. And I'm perped. So, a massive amount of torture of me in Metzger, Oregon in 2013. Broadcast into my rectum. It was horrible. That was pretty intense. There, some perps invaded the little town to come after me, and there was a guy that identified as an international terrorist, posing as a guy named Darrell, and such and so forth. I know now that they only need to know my location, so I don't need to go around tearing up freaking other things like ability to communicate at all, and an effort to waste time or resources that perps would like TI to do, so they can sit back in the EMF as their broadcast consciousness and enjoy the torture even more. They say that's how they rise. They get high off the brain waves and torture of TI and can rape and pillage the 3D. They're like the EMF perp humans that get involved in this. I liken them to the concentration camp members, the humans that dug the massive grave for all them to get shot and thrown into. Except these guys get way high or something. I like to maybe brag about it every once in a while, but don't really want people to know that my torture and the other TI means their ascension. They ascend, around 3D. Devil's in heaven. And that's all this has been for 15 years. Satanism. And then you think, what's the opposite of Satanism? That must be God. No. The opposite of Satanism is what I had at like 25 years and prior, before becoming a TI. It's been difficult. My parents, pardon me, moved to Australia for a while to be with my brother Brad and his family, his young family. and my dad enjoying his retirement overseas, and among a lot of other variables, but me under a lot of targeted individual torture, only thinking it as mental illness that time, really having a hard time, him sort of having to swoop back into the States to save me and um, allow me to like move in with my folks who took care of me once again. I spent some time. They got a house in Westland for a while. Some of my perps brag that my parents are now in Arizona because they gang stalked my parents, which they massively gang stalked my parents before. They may be believing like a EMF perpetrator showing up as a lawyer or something, saying, you know, we have a court order, you can't talk to your son about this stuff, and they like feel roughed up and coerced and conned as elderly boomer parents. Some of the activity I saw against them during some of the psyops in West Lynn were inhumane also, but you know what's being done to me as the TI is also very painful. I may have mentioned it for a while. This group of NSA flying monkeys had me convinced that my parents were killed and replaced by reptilians. And it was EMF perps showing up as my parents for moments in their house. My parents are fine in Arizona. But yeah, this group that's here in Hillsboro was just bragging about they're the reason why my elderly boomer parents are now living in Arizona. And my aunt in LA is tortured and terrorized every day. Even getting emails from her describing her torture is really triggering for me. I try to send her as much good advice and solutions as I can. She's an elderly boomer lady. She's being tortured by these gangs every day. Every day. I don't even get a chance to talk to my brother Brad anymore. He's so pissed off at me. Still, after 3 years, I almost died in between last time I talked to my blood brother Brad out in Australia. I hope he's not getting perped in Australia, but I got some Australian friends on Facebook that are TI. So the B system does spread out there. I was following a Japanese woman who was in Hawaii having a horrible time. I was tactically disrupted from communicating with her again. I think it was one of those deep state sort of man in the middle things, but she was forced into prostitution as a TI and lives a life of getting ridiculed and torture and sensitivity to racism, and had a lot of empathy for her, and treated like a steak. They like to fuck like I've felt before, you know, rectal tortured, found my cure with magnets, try to pass that on as a solution to anybody getting that rectal torture that really makes you want to die. Yeah, there's a lot of us out there living our own quiet hells, some more publicly than others. Old elderly women getting abused, girls as young as 12. Some of my perps have said they do this to, you know, kids' daughters. I was stolen in grad school off the State Board of Higher Ed. Kevin feels like it was his wicked ex-girlfriend, a gang stalker bitch, that got him into the program. A woman I talked to in Arizona, she thought it was her ex-boyfriend. And on and on and on. Neurolinguistic programming, satanic neurolinguistic programming every day. Because a trigger-happy, corrupt, likely, possibly government official in my capacity or particular manifestation of how did I pop into the beast system, saw me all the way out here in Oregon, and as soon as my college days, boom, cut off in my prime. One of my first World of Warcraft characters, my first one was a hunter, who, for those that were World of Warcraft fans, in World of Warcraft, if you were a hunter, you had like you had a pet companion, that you could send out in attacks and like use bows and arrows and or shooting for a ranged attack also. And I called my first WoW character Tall Trees because it was a code used in the that was satanic neurolinguistic programming actually. In Rwanda, when a guy they had worked on pre-plans ahead of time. Imagine that, Infraguard, Fusion Center, gang stalkers, huh? And before they started the Rwandan genocide, a guy on the radio said, it's time to cut down the tall trees. And that was like the moment that things kicked off. And so I had covertly gotten cut down in my youth because I could lead. And it wasn't just the shape of my nose or which, colonizing force picked me. The difference between the Hutus and the Tutsis was very slight, but it was, divide and conquer. So some of the joy that I even was able to cobble together is my parents had to take care of a disabled, grown adult, but, childlike responsibilities financially. I was cut down in my youth, and made reference to that movie, Motel Rwanda, because I was like leadership type, and that's why they came after me. I felt like, or my life getting destroyed with seeming mental illness, but it was really like calculations that it was financially cheaper to destroy my life than give people a fair shake on tuition costs, which I would, and stuff like that I intended to work on for the rest of my life and did. A lot of that evidence has been destroyed now and stolen and probably attributed to somebody else off a virtual drive as I'm driven insane in a mental institution in Hillsborough. I was just reading the Oregonian. The legislature is responding to a massive influx of mentally ill people with low-level criminal charges, like waiting to get into the state hospital. A lot of that may be RNM, remote neural monitoring, voice to skull, BC, brain-computer interface, tortured TIs, like me, that are in those systems. So I don't have all the answers there, but and this, I can't get people to stop the broadcasts of me, like all those horrendously challenged, disadvantaged influx of low-level criminals needing to get into the mental state hospital through the systems in the state of Oregon may be very much targeted individuals, not like schizophrenia or bipolar or psychosis, only mental illness. No, it's both all that, and then they're also getting gang stalked to suicide because they lived in a blue state or blew a whistle on, all of this happening around the world. It's a bitch. It's a real slow kill genocide. I had what Kevin's described with the rectal torture. I had it for so long. I had hemorrhoids removed. These gangs. Yeah. You call that the butt hurt, or more accurately, rectal torture. Extreme, prolonged, even designed for suicide. Butt hurt. And there's a literal translation to your little internet slang there. Champions of common dignity, decency, and human rights. No, he's got the butt hurt. Makes you want to commit suicide, among other stuff. Solved with N52 level magnets taped outside your sphincter. Leave, in as long as possible. Leave it in at night, and you should be safer eventually from EMF perp rape you to suicide. And then they film it, and then you can have like my eyeball experience at the same time. the secret EMF bandwidth around here that you can only see if you're EMF. Like the other day, I was looking in here and caught the reflection off my eyeball of the EMF broadcast, and it was like in the form of a black canine dog, and I could see it in the room here. And then I think I may have done a video of some of the other stuff that sort of the guys that were in here. There's somebody's got a bird on remote control or whatever, how it's done, artificial intelligence, stuff like that. Like I said before, staff getting replaced. Public places I go to set for Satanism, torture, shit like that. EMF perpetrators. My life is hell. It has been for 15 years, and it's manufactured around me. So so many decades ago, I was sitting in my father's house playing like California games. There was no such thing as the internet. I don't think by then, Oregon Trail on the Apple IIc. My brother's maybe playing a text written version of Ultima or Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Now we're here and they have video gameized in no good ways. It's only been torture for me for 15 years. Around normal 3D reality itself with electromagnetic frequency technology, throwing your consciousness out off a computer into somebody else's house and whatnot. And it's Satanism. I mean, Kevin Christian in some of his interviews talks about some of the other applications of this technologies, blind. It could let blind people see. There was out of the disclosure of the guy that jumped ship out of the perp, and in Seattle, he's like, it can heal limbs. They say this technology. I don't totally understand what they mean by that. And for me, it's only been used for torture, Satanism, early death, keeping me from my life's goals for higher ed finance, pain, suffering, degrading, humiliating, destroying the human condition every day, 24 hours a day actually, around me, disguised as mental illness, for 15 years. They fucking sit around and derange when they fly in with their flying monkey crews and probably take all the available women and formulate plans around town. They'll beat into my head just to make me tortured more because I won't go interact with the B system shit show opera about women in general. Motherfuckers, I'm getting, tortured every fucking day, and then to add more torture to the packet, or plate or options for a straight man, they want to bring in honeypotting females or something but what had been their pattern for me as a TI had been even child endangerment and stuff, horrible like that, or in the B system getting mismatched with gang stalkers that are gay or something like that, who I normally didn't have a problem with. Rectal torture from cowards, cons, and parasites of the EMF, that's something different. That's rape and, and torture. That's not, very nice people that I've met over my life in the gay and lesbian community, who don't deserve to be persecuted. But yeah, so I'm in the B system. Too many other Americans are. I'm a mockingbird target. I recently realized that my affected Southern voice in Mr. Sweet Tea, taken to another angle on the predicted outcome of trauma-based mind control, is actually a little Project Bluebirdish. Artichoke, maybe, something in there. Anyways, my buddy Dave Perkins from high school, who was a TI also, I'm pretty sure, and got tortured. He had a character he did called Zimmerman. He finally, I think, stopped doing it and stuff like that. But it's out of the torture. Yeah. Like when I moved into Tualatin, like gang stalkers moved into the apartments, staff were replaced in the building, and the community slander just unfolded. Traveling in and around Portland, of what came through there over the last 3 years was really pretty intense. Driven homeless systematically by these perps, these gangster stalkers. Electromagnetic form, cowards, cons, and parasites. Yeah, so there's a few names of these links for these broadcasts out there that they've been telling me that I need shut down in the name of national security and my life. They won't do that, because it's national security that's attacking me and 1.5 million Americans in a slow genocide kill that won't get recorded, in the ways that it would avoid these kinds of things repeating in history. I feel like such an asshole in this moment, or otherwise, not able to stop history from repeating. Like, I can point it out, like these tactics, even before EMF gang stalking, community policing, they called it, the snitch community, like, took down Germany and the USSR. It's the same shit, motherfuckers. We're not speaking Russian. Like, I'm not your fucking comrade. No, I do not hang out at, like, Nazi white pride rallies. I happen to be white and absolutely superior in about 4 or 5 things, and have survived mind control and shit that would peel the paint off your fucking wall. But I refuse to, like, get rendered into racism without correcting it through deprogramming I maybe even need to do for myself. But the white nationalism stuff that they're showing in the media and stuff, that's being concocted even through trauma-based mind control, maybe even especially. People are running around as EMF perpetrators, impersonating the form of people they really aren't. Lives are being destroyed, homes invaded, community disrupted. My understanding is that a lot of people get told, like, bad information, and they think they're doing the right thing in the perp end. I just encountered this recently. There's a guy on YouTube that is pretty convinced myself and my parents need to fucking die. I have never met this dude. I watched one of his videos. He looks really confused. And, like, he's getting worked on by, perpetrators himself. And have been reasonable with him and will continue to be. But it's, because of these psychological operations against me and my family, among other things, I have a guy on Not Stable on YouTube who's now made 1, 2, maybe 3, like, I want you and your family dead. Like, naming my mom and me. Maybe my dad, I don't know. So I've been pretty reasonable with him in the comment section and don't think anything's going to come of it. But the secret link EMF broadcast of me and this torture and destruction of me as a TI has motherfuckers that may have like watched it or something, like making threats of the life of my parents and me, and then my aunt and I are already TI. We're already getting cooked. Satanic neurolinguistic programming every day. They exclusively use that technique on me. Not for a year, not for 4, not for 5, not for 10, for 15 years. And they're real people. And their bodies are in other locations. They can't be killed here. And they try to design suicide so that I do die. The federal government has been shut down for the longest time in American history recently. Ending my broadcasts are, I would say, in a matter of national security for the better. Stop torturing me and my family. Stop using neurolinguistic programming to like totally deceive and mind control the masses secretly and then not so secretly. I'll probably get into that. Happy birthday to me.